Shin Tzadi Bet. So, yeah. I was thinking it's important to remember that this is actually a meditation. And it is possible to be able to look at the pages that we're going to go through, which is, we had a question about whether or not you actually need to put in all of these diagrams that he has here because they're basically duplicates. We'll see how duplicated they are. So on page Tafshin Tzadi Bet, we're starting with the idea of what the SEFIRA Hamshachas HaMolchin, Shavua Shvihi, Tiferes, Malchus, the Chabad Chagtan. And we've been through those words and we're familiar with them. And so this is the day of Shiva V'Arbaim Yom Shehem Shisha Shavuos V'Chamisha Yom in the Omer. So if you were following according to the SEFER, then you would plug into this, and you would. This is what you'll have for the Leil Shiva V'Arbaim. So he just has a little statement here, which before we look at the drawing itself. It says, Katnas Rishon, the Yasos is the Vuna, the parts of HaChochma. So this is, we're dealing with godless, Katnas Rishon here. The Tavuna, the parts of HaChochma. Again, Katnas Rishon. This would come from Yasos and Tavuna, which means that's going to be the Rishon. The parts of HaChochma to the parts of HaChochma. That is a deal with this. That's where it's going. Okay, so you're going to have the kavanah, the hamshech of the bina, to bina v'das, v'chagtam, the ovi. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm always hoping that when Yom Tov comes around, I will get a little of aliyah in consciousness and be able to understand things better. Let me pull this back a little bit. You can see it here. So he says, Tiferes Malchus the Chachma. So that's the first thing we see here. And we're going to see the called Soma. So the first thing was have the Oros. So looking at it, all that I can see to do here, it is important not to try to reason this out. It's important just to look at it because he's telling us, this is my opinion, that this is what it looks like in Atzilus. So he's saying that this is a fact. So the fact is that these are the Oros, and we know that there are 4 sets of them. He has a total of 4 because he's doing the Yasa side, one for Yesod and the other one for Tiferes, rather, the other one for Malchus. He has the Vuna, and he shows the same thing. It's interesting that the Nikuda, the Nikud that we have here is a Cholam. That's what it seems like. These are Cholamos. And then you have, he shows you that the right side is going to be the Yasa side, and the left side is going to be the Tavuna side. And as we said, that they're divided into two separates. And he shows the Moach. Now this I find a little bit troubling because he had went through and he showed the Oros coming down, right? And then the next thing that should be, well, maybe that is right. I'm wrong. You know, I've had a problem somewhere else. I was looking at it, and this is not it. So it's the Oros. They go into the Moach. The Moach goes into the Tzelem. And now we come down to the first little understanding. He says it goes to the Dati, the Hug. Of the Hug of Tiferes, the Shnei Partzufi Nai V'Chagat. So we kind of been trained on this, and he'll give us a chance if we want to go over to the next side. Let's see, I'm in the wrong place. There we go. And we will read it again. He says it's going to go to the Dati, which he said, I believe, his definition is the Dati, the Hug, the Hind of the Tlas, Pirkin, the Spheres, the Tiferes, and Malchus. So Dati is the 3 spheres of Das, Tiferes, and Yesod. But what concerned me is he says it's of the Hug of Tiferes. the Chug, the Chasadim, and the Gevuras of Tiferes. I guess that's what we're going to be looking at. The Shnei Partsufim Nai v'Chagat, and it's going to go into the middle and the lower Partsufim of Chagat. To call Echad Mechamesha Partsufi Bina, to each one of the Partsufim of Bina, because Bina is associated with Yisrael Sab and Tavuna, Dina, the Ma'u ben Deza, that it's the Ma'u ben the Ma, and the Ma'u ben the Ben. It's going to go into all the sides, the Hitzonius, the Panemius. Once again, the nature of it is that it has a Hitzoni part and a Panemi part. The Panemi Maki for the Oros, because that's what we're looking at. That's what maybe I was getting at before. I forgot. I don't remember. So he says, let's say where are we? The Panim Umakif, and we're talking about, you have to read it backwards. So going to Panim and Makif, this is also a chart in the Rechovos Nahar Siddur for Siddur. So if you go backwards, then you start with the Oros. The Oros are inside of both the Panemius and the Kitzonius, apparently, of Zeranpin. And it's going to go to both sides of the Zeranpin. It's going to go to the Ma'u ben the Ma, or the Ma'u ben the Ben, the Zeranpin. Then he shows you the Shlosha Kli Tiferes Dezah. And, well, like I say, I think the only thing that we're supposed to do here, he's giving us directions, which we need directions to understand where it's going and where it's coming from. But what he really wants us to do here is look at the page and realize what's happening is that these Oros are fitting themselves into Mochin and Tzlomim, and eventually they're going to wind their ways into the Kalim. So let's go to the next page, and the next page, and we're going to go through this. And we could come back to read the blurb he has at the beginning, or not the intro that he has at the beginning, if we want. And like I said yesterday, he says it's interesting the fact that when he talks about Malchus, he doesn't say to Malchus, he says, but to the Malchus, to the different Malchus and the Demus and the Mizpah, Shemos, Nefashos, all of these details in the Ranchi. And where's it going to go? It's going to go once again to the same address. It's going to go to the three different sections of the Dati of Chug. The Deferis, the Kol HaPratim, and Iskarim, the El, the Yaakov, and Rachel. And the Yaakov and Rachel means it's going to go to Malchus. Shlosha Kli Deferis the Nook. So there they are. Now, let me just look here again. Because, once again, it's a repeat. It's a page that looks a lot like the last page. Let me just double check. Yeah. So that was the reason why in the what was he called, the not the TIV Kavanos, but he has the Shefa Kavanos. Well, he says that in some Sidurim, the way that they did it, they didn't list all of this. Let's go back up to the top. At the top, it says that what we're going to be looking at it. Once again, we have the Oros. And again, I believe that the idea here is to look at this. The Ferris of Malchus the Bina, this is what's coming down now. All these Oros, 4 different sets, because we said there was a reason for this. Why the 4? Because each one of them contains all 4. That seemed to be his idea. And then we have the Yasus sides, and one part of it is for Malchus, so is for Tiferes, and one part is for Malchus, and we have the Tavuna side, the same thing. Now, I'm not sure there's a deeper meaning in this. I'm not sure at all. And then you have the Moach and the Tzalim. Of each one of these individually. And then you have the picture of the Shlosha Kli Tiferes to Zeranpin. They're all going into the Tiferes of Zeranpin, and the clay looks exactly the same in each one of them. But we're in Bina. So let's, there goes the alarm again. Oh, baby. Okay. 1 second, Rebbe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you understand. Let me see. I'm going to try to turn this off here for a second. So it's just like I'm going to. Okay, so that here we are. So I was up at the top, and we're just taking a scan of this is to realize what's going on. Now I don't know if I try this out on you, but my one of my grandchildren is very good at this actually because they let him learn with me. So he's actually, yeah, he's I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to Israel next year, God willing. Very good. Anyway, yeah, he says Shlosha Kli Tiferes Zeranpin. That's where I got to there. So what was I trying to say? I was trying to say that there's a concept in psychology, which we may have discussed this already before, called the Gestalt. The Gestalt, you probably heard of it. So maybe I talked to you about it before. So that's part of what we're trying to see here, is that the background, the white page, is actually without the white page, the black print, the black letters that appear in Olam Atzilus would not be visible. And the same thing is true if you only had the black letters. It would just be black on black. You need a foreground and a background. And so that in meditating on this, what is important to see is that there is a light behind the letters. And the light is being transferred into different containers, let's say, of the Mochim and the Tzelem and so on and so forth, and then the Shlosha Kli. Okay, so that was Tiferes and Malchus Divina. And then we have Tiferes and Malchus the Das, and surprisingly enough, it's exactly the same. Okay, how this works, but it is that if you went from the bottom to the top, because of the way that it's interesting that the way that the phrase Kol Sama starts is with the Keli, which is the one at the bottom. And then everything else fits into the Keli. But when we see it on the page, he don't show it that way. Instead, he shows it as the Oros first, which, of course, is starting from the beginning. But we look at it, we're on the outside, so we look at it, we look at the Kli, that maybe that's the reason why he says Kol Sama, like that in that order, instead of reversing it. Let's go to the next one, and we'll see it like this, Tiferes and Malchus the Chesed. So we're going down the line, and it's going to be the same. And he says, and it's going to go into the Kli, the Shlosha Kli Tiferes the Zer Anpin, Shlosha Kli to Tiferes the Nook. And that's how this is going to go. So we have the next one is Tiferes and Malchus the Gevura. And once again, surprisingly enough, the Mochim and the Tzlamim are the same. So it is, in fact, let's see, so what is he trying to tell me with that? He's trying to tell me that it's going into the same places in the Chabad Chagtam. I think that's what he's saying too. And it's exactly the same, but it's a different position in terms of the wrapper that is around these oros. So again, once again, Shlosh Kli Tiferes Dezah, and that is going to spill or in some way travel into the Shlosha Kli Tiferes Denuk. And now we're coming here a little bit more. He says on page Shin, Taf Shin Sadites, right? We're here with the Tiferes and Malchus the Tiferes, right? We're moving this into different places and positions, I believe, in the Chabad Chagdam. And let's see, the last one, Tiferes and Malchus the Malchus. That's all there is. Now, we can go back a little bit. See, I'm messing up this with SEFIRA. One second. Okay. Let's check our language here, where he's trying to teach us once again. He's using the same techniques. It's basically the same as the last one. I'm in the wrong place. One second. It's here. Where? Here. Shiva v'arboim. So he had said, Kadnas Rishon de Yasos, he had said that this is what we're dealing with. V'yasos and Tavuna, right? So that's going to be going to Bina, the parts of a Chochma. This is that part of Chochma. I'm a little confused at that because I thought he told us that Yasos and Tavuna is dealing with Bina, the parts of a Chachma. Okay, let's read. He says Le'el Shiva v'Arbaim. Shiva Arbaim. He says Hamochem and Ignasin the El Shiva v'Arbaim Hem Hamochem the Katas Rishon the Yasas of the Vuna v'Nimshachin the Dati the Chagat the Chug. So my question is he says he wants to go to the Chasanim and the Gevuros. Is that what he said? The Hainu the Tlas Pirkin the Spheres Ferris and Malchus. The Orech the parts of Chabad Chagtam. So we're going to get each of the Chabad Chagtam is going to receive this Shefa. The Ferris of Malchus, it's going to go to those two places. So now we're down at the bottom because we are approaching Shavuot. The Orech of the Partsufim Chabad Chagtam to Ovi. So it's going to go all of those places. There are 7 spots there. The parts of Bina HaKolel. So once again, this is where it says a Bina HaKolel, but he says it's coming from Chochmah. God. The Chochmah, Bina HaKolel Dezah, the Sadra Kam Hamshachas Kafula the Yasos Tavuna. So as we saw in the previous page, you have to have double Hamshacha here because you have both Tiferes and Malchus on the page. Let me see if what I do. The parts of the Hamshacha Kafula the Yasos V'Chein. L'Noknim Shachim Chelke Hamochim Shalah. So she also gets a portion too. Hamalchus, and once again, he wants to say this phrase, Hamalchius, all these different aspects that come along with Malchus, which is Malchios, V'demus, Mispar, counts, names, and the Fashos. The Sephiris, the Ferris, and Malchus, so he wants to say this is going to go to both of them. The Orch, of the length of each one of the Partsufim, the Partsufi Chabad Chagtam the Ovi, because we see that each one of them is going to go into that Tiferes of Malchus. The parts of Abina Chakola the Nook. So all the Shefa that we see here, that's where it's going. When he goes through the definitions, it gets me a little bit lost. So on this night, what happens is that Tiferes Aprati the Chesed Shvi. What comes in at the Veris, the Malchus, the Chesed, the Chagat. Now, let me see what we said here. He says, in this set of the Hamshocha, we have the Tiferes, the specific prayer of the Chasadim. Now, that's why he said the Chug. Of the Chasadim, the Tiferes, the specific Tiferes, the Chesed will become in the Chesed Hashvi to the final Chesed. So the final Chesed is what? Hod. Let me see if I understand. The Malchus, the Chesed, the Chagat, to the Malchus of the Chesed of Chagat, which is the middle parts of. So he says, what Spheris a Chesed, Shehi Meklal Partsufi Chagat, which is part of that. It's going to go to that. Of that the Chagat. So once again, when he says, it's basically Chagat, the Chagat. So the last Chagat is the Malchus, the Perikim Soy, the Spheris a Chesed, because Chagat is the Perikim Soy. Then it also goes at the same time, though, to the 9. It's the Malchus of the Perik Tachton, the Spheris a Chesed. So it's going to lower one, the Zer Anpet. Of V'kach, and now he goes into the Duchuyos. Of V'kach Nidcha HaNatzach, there was a Natzach there. Now you bring a Hod in. HaPrati, the Chesed, the Shavi of that seventh Chesed, which is Malchus. The Malchus, the Gevurah, the Chagat. And it's going to go to the Malchus of the parts of the Gevurah, which is a part of the Chagat, which is the middle section. The Spheris HaGevurah Shehi B'klal Partsufi HaHagat, which is part of that, the Chagat of the middle section of Malchus, the Perik Emsoy, the Spheris HaGevurah. Now this is going through this translation. At any rate, it's tedious. So he said Mesoy the Spheris Hagavura V'nai. So also the Malchus the Perik Tachton the Spheris Hagavura the Zeranpin. So we see in the Malchus here we see the Perik Emsoy, which is the Chagat. We're dealing with Katnas. V'kach nidcha hoda prati the chesed hashavi, and in this way the specific is pushed down this hod of this chesed hashavi, of which is I guess would be malchus. The malchus the teferes the chagat, which is it's going to go to the malchus of the teferes of that middle line of the teferes of the teferes the chagat, spheres of teferes shehim b'chlal partzufi hachagat. The Chagat of the middle section, Malchus, Perikim, Socha, the spheres of Tiferes. And also at the same time is going to go to the Nai. So he's talking here about the Dechuyah. Malchus, the Perik HaTachton, the spheres of Tiferes, which is the Nai. So it goes into those two places, and we're talking about Chesed, we're talking about Tiferes and Malchus. So therefore we see what happens is we get more pushing. The pushing pushes the Yesod, Aprati, the Chesed Shvi of that seventh pesach, the Malchus, the Netzach, the Nai, to the Malchus of the Netzach, the Nai. Spheres of Netzach, Shehim Klal Partzufi Anai, which is part of that's going to go to Netzach. The Chagat, Malchus, the Perikim Soy, the spheres of Netzach, and Nai is the Malchus, the Perikim Tachton, the spheres of Netzach, the Zeranpin. V'kach nidchis ha-malchus ha-pratis, and in this way, we are pushing the malchus, the specific one that we're talking about, the chesed ha-shvi, the seventh chesed, the malchus, the hod, it goes into the malchus of the hod. So this is the hamshacha dechuya. Spheres hod shehi bechlal partzufi anai, and let's go to the spheres hod, which is part of that. The Chagah, the Malchus, the parts of it, Mesorah, the spheres of Hod, so it's going to go to that area. Uvanai, also the same time, the Perek Tachton, the spheres of Hod, the Zah. So everything happening in the fifth day here in Hod. So now he wants to talk about this. The Penimia, the Makif, the Oros are going to be coming too. Now, again, you're like looking backwards because we look for the Kalim, we see what's happening in the Kalim, and then you have to look back to find out what's going into the Kalim, which is the Oros. Which are the Pinim and the Malkos, and Makif. The Teferes, the Gevura, B'Shashavis, the Das, the Zer Anpen. Where is it going to go? It's going to go to the Malchus, the Chesed, the Chagat. He said the Sefiras, the Chesed, which Beklala parts of the Chagat. The Chagat of the Chagat, which is the middle parts of, or the middle section. Malchus, the Perek, and Mesorah, the Sefiras of Chesed. The Nai, which is the Malchus, the Perek, Tachton, the Sefiras of Chesed. The Nuk. The Naasas Sedach, the Chuyos, Knizker, Bezer Anpen. So everything gets pushed back just the same way we did by Zer Anpen. I guess he's talking about the Nuk here. Lacher Mekan Yekav, the Saka Penimi, Rabbi Malchus, the Hod. The Nai, the Chagat, of the lower part, the Malchus, the Perek, and Mesorah, the Hod, the Nai, and also the same thing of the Nai, the Perek, the Tachto, the Hod, the Zun, and then here is the wind up on the back part of this, the Zun, the Hamshech Shefa for Ha'aram and Malchus, the Hod, the Nai, the Chagat, and the Nai, so we're going to be pushing it down there. Malchus, the Perek, and Mesorah, and Malchus, the Perek, Tachto, the Hod, the Zam. The Malchus, the Hod, the Nai. It's going to go there, the Chagat and the Nai, and he keeps explaining to us what we mean by Chagat and Nai, the Malchus, the Perek, and Mesorah, the Malchus, the Perek, Tachto, the Hod, the Nuk. It's a little tedious for me to go through all of those, but I'm filling up time here to put that out there. Now, there was something I wanted to look at with you. We're running out of time. We have like 2 minutes. Let's go to the 1 minute. Okay. Okay, let's do this tomorrow. From the Blue Book, I sent you some pictures. I think it's the last picture, and it would be on page 128. Let me see, let me show this out over here. Wait, what happened? That's not it. This is it. Okay. Okay, and just take a quick look at this. What he's saying is that each and every day, except when we get towards the end, he starts bunching them up, which I don't know why he does any of the things that he does. But in each and every day, there is an aliyah, a matching of the ma and the ben. And what's interesting to me about this is that, let's say he takes Ekia, but look how he has it vocalized. And the same
Yeah.
same thing with the ma, and the same thing with the ben. So we're here over here, and then at the end, as you had said, we get them bunched together. We get on day 41, we get the whole pile of them, and the same thing all the way through until the end. I don't know exactly what happens. So he says that down below it, if you're still here, down below it, we have the mob, the ma. This is an this is an aliyah here, right? Because it's a mob. And you find day number 47. It's once again, it's part of the name Ma, spelled several different times. 1, 2, 3, 4 different times here. 5, 6, 7 different times, broken up. And then the same thing with Ben. Okay, and that's it for today. That's all I got.